Hello and welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Sean Firmage. I'll be your host for this webinar today. Just to start, I'd like to give out a reminder that our next webinar will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, also with James Tanner, and is titled I Read It in the Newspaper. Um, and then before we start our webinar today, if you guys would like to participate in the polls we have down at the bottom of the screen, we'd always love to hear any topics that you'd be interested in the next month or so, so we can maybe squeeze those into our calendar coming up here. And also, just as a reminder, during the presentation today, there will be a question pod to the right of the screen. If you do have a question during James's slideshow, just type that into the question pod, and we'll make sure that it gets answered before we close out today. Today we'll be pleased to hear from James Tanner, who will be giving a presentation titled Dive into the Cloud with Google Docs and Google Drive. James Tanner has a bachelor's degree in Spanish and a master's in linguistics from the University of Utah. He received a Juris Doctor degree in law from Arizona State University. He worked for 39 years as an Arizona trial attorney. He previously owned a retail computer business and an Apple Macintosh software company. James has over 35 years of experience in genealogical research and is a blogger for Genealogy Star and the blog Rejoice and Be Exceeding Glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving here at the BYU Family History Library. He is the co-author or author of over 25 books on genealogical research and has presented at expos and conferences around the United States and Canada. James has 7 children and 33 grandchildren. And we'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Howdy, this is James Tanner. We're glad to be here for another BYU Family History Library webinar. I'd like to remind everyone that these webinars are recorded and uploaded to our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel on youtube.com. And if you would like to, we'd invite you to subscribe to the channel. Subscribing helps us get a little bit of visibility above the background noise on YouTube of dogs and cats and other strange things. So that's helpful to us, and would also, if you'd like to like the channel, that also helps. Today we're going to talk about dive into the cloud with Google Docs and Google Drive. First of all, I think it helps to know that what we're trying to do here is to say goodbye to the suitcase. Now, one of the things that's kind of the hallmark of going to a genealogical library, particularly the one up here just north of us in Salt Lake City, the Family History Library, it's quite an experience if you'll go there right at 9 o'clock in the morning when the library opens, because you'll see all these people standing around. It looks like they're moving in. They're all dragging huge suitcases on wheels as they come into the library. And the idea there is that they feel like they have to take their life's history of research if they're going to go to the library, and just in case they need something, that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe they are moving in and they just sleep in the basement. I don't know. But the idea there is that we're going to try to get rid of those suitcases and learn how it is you can do exactly the same thing, but not have to haul around all that equipment. Okay, so we're going to say hello to digital docs in the cloud. And the word cloud is a little bit confusing. It's kind of arisen the last few years as a jargon term from the online folks. And cloud-based programs, which you're probably familiar with, at least whether you are actually using the programs or whether someone you're simply aware of someone around you using them. We have a cloud-based program. It's a program that runs off of the internet, and when you access that through a program that's called a browser that runs on your computer. And a browser is like Chrome or Firefox or Safari or any of the other Edge, which is the new Microsoft browser. These are all different kinds of browsers that access these kinds of programs. When you are not connected to the internet, you cannot use these programs. They're simply not available to you. So this is an internet-based or cloud-based programs. Email is probably the most common one that people are familiar with. Obviously, you have to log into your email account online in order to get your email, download your email. Um, Most of the time, people have that set up so it does so the downloading is automatic and you're notified of new email. But if you travel and you do not have a connection, you'll know that you can't get your email. So this is how you know that the program is cloud-based. Cloud storage. Many people, particularly genealogists, have discovered programs like OneDrive from Microsoft and Google Drive, which we're going to talk about today, and uh, Dropbox and other programs where we can either temporarily or more permanently store your data. There's also storage, long-term storage, backing up your computer to programs that generally charging a certain amount per month or per year to back up your computer, either manually or automatically. Third classification, of course, it's very popular is social networking. All of the new programs like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all of these programs are cloud-based. And if you're not connected to the internet, you have no connection at all. You're not participating in social networking. Um, in genealogy, an example of a cloud-based program is FamilySearch.org. You have to be online to access the family tree on FamilySearch.org or to do search for records or use any of the other items that are on the program on that particular website. So these are programs that are accessed or used or run while you are connected to the internet. The advantage of this, of course, is that the internet is now everywhere. At one point in time, just not too many years ago, Wi-Fi was becoming the kind of new product, new thing that was out there. And I can remember that I still was very concerned when I was traveling that I would not have proper connections. Well, today, if you travel, you find out that almost every motel and hotel in the country has Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi. Well, free in the sense you got to pay for your room, but also libraries and even McDonald's, hamburger places. Every place has Wi-Fi now. Now that all my children have Wi-Fi, when I'm visiting, I'm simply moving from one Wi-Fi connection to another. So it's really not a difficult thing to continue to keep connection. In fact, we were camping just recently up in Montana and into Idaho, and it turned out that in every campground except for one, we had internet connections and either Wi-Fi or connection to the internet. So this was, we're out in the middle of nowhere next to a lake. People are out there fishing, and we are sitting on the internet. So it's getting pretty pervasive out there in the world. So cloud-based programs only work when you're connected to the internet. And they work with a browser program, as I mentioned. And the third part is they work with any device with a browser program. So when you're working on a telephone, a smartphone that's connected to the internet, you can work with a browser on that. You can work with a browser on a tab or on an iPad or a tablet computer. Any kind of device that's connected to the internet and will run a browser program will connect and use programs that are on the internet. The browsers that I mentioned are, and these are the little icons for them, they're Chrome there, starting in the upper left-hand corner, and Safari. The red O you might not recognize, that's Opera. That's a very popular browser program among computer users, but not so popular among just normal consumer people. I mean, people who are on computers a lot use Opera. Firefox and then Edge, those are probably the big five. browsers out there. By the way, there are dozens and dozens of other programs that work as browser programs out there. Um, and from time to time, some of them make an attempt to try to get into greater usage. Um, Now, we're going to focus here on cloud-based genealogy, and the idea here is that we're using online family tree programs. There's probably dozens, if not probably in excess of 100 different online family tree programs out there in lots of different countries around the world. And these particular programs are extremely diverse in their features, in what they can and they can't do, and they do come and go, by the way. There's a number of major online family trees hosting programs that have dropped off the internet in the last couple of years, the last few years. So they do come and go. And we have online documents, photos, audio, and video files. We can watch movies. We can, many of us are connected to video connections like YouTube, where our BYU Family History Library channel is on YouTube, or Netflix, or the commercials channels like Netflix and Amazon and others. And we can do an online research log or note keeping. We can store our documents online. We can store our photos. We can store audio files and video files, connect them to our online family tree, and we can then also do our research online and keep a research log and note keeping. In essence, what I'm saying here is that all of the traditional functions that genealogists have built up over the years, the methodologies for doing genealogy, has been successfully and completely reproduced online, and without the use of paper, and using just the computer for connections. And an online research outline and objectives. Objectives. I'll talk about each of these a little bit more as we go along. And reports. Obviously, we can produce reports. Now, to understand this, this little icon of a smartphone, sort of a generic smartphone, which would be a phone connected to the internet. Now, most of these phones are equipped today with cameras. Some of them are very good cameras, and they can also take videos. They can also do sound recordings. They are basically a complete computer and a handheld device. And the information that's gathered by that phone can then be stored on the internet and accessed. That's called the cloud out here, comes from our device out there to the cloud, and then from the cloud goes to your home computer. So you can automatically access a document or anything else that they're working at. Now let me kind of give you a hypothetical here. Let's suppose that I am going to take a research trip to the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, and which I've done very frequently. And historically, what I would do, of course, is the same thing that you probably did, and that is have a big briefcase or a suitcase full of documents. Over the years, I realized that I didn't need to do that. I do now take a computer because I like the keyboard. I like to be able to type and enter information in. But on occasion, I have been there when I have just had my phone. Now, I find a document. So, for example, I've got a book, or I get onto a microfilm and I find the document that I want. I use my phone to take a picture of the document or the page in the book that I'm interested in, and then I take a picture of the title page or the whatever information about the source, so that I know where my picture came from. And when I do that, what I'm going to talk about today is that photo of the document that I've just found at the Family History Library is then automatically stored online. It then becomes immediately available by the time I walk out the door of the Family History Library. In fact, almost within a few seconds after I've taken the photo, it is online, assuming I have a connection and I'm not down on B2 in the bottom of the Family History Library in the basement, where I can't get very good connection. But usually they have Wi-Fi, but not always. It doesn't always work really well. But in most cases, the document that I've done is already out there on the cloud. I can go home, then I can just open that cloud device In this case, we're going to be talking about Google products, so this would be out on Google Docs, and I would then, or Google Drive, and I would then have that immediately for my use at home, and then I can at my leisure. So I don't have to sit there and copy it out. I don't have to do a lot of evaluation and research and looking at it. I can just gather the information as quickly as possible in the library and then come home and work through all of those documents that I have. And usually what happens, it takes me a little while to do that, and I'm really surprised to find out that I found all this good stuff that I should have known about. But that's the process. Okay, so basically, if we go from the device to the cloud, then we can go to our desktop, to another computer anywhere. Okay, so let's suppose I'm sitting here in the library here at BYU. They have a lot of computers here available. I simply need to log in to the internet. In my case, log into Chrome and to my Google account. And then I immediately have access to all those documents that I have taken pictures of, scanned or uploaded or whatever. So the key here is by feeding all of my information into my computers by scanning it and then putting that out there on the cloud, I immediately make all that information available. So those big piles of family group records or those years of notes in the notebooks or whatever it is, if that were all scanned, then you would have all of that available on the cloud to be used by any computer anywhere, including your phone. So I can look at a list of documents that I've created on Google Docs, for example, and I can access that from any place. If I walk into the library and I haven't, the key here is I shouldn't forget my phone, but if, which very rarely happens because it's hard to get away from it. And if I have my phone, then I actually have all of my research and all of my documentation and everything that I've done because I've consistently for years now put everything into and scanned everything into computer programs that are being shared online. So this is the way, and now it comes back to your device. So you can access this from anywhere, and the advantage, of course, is that you're going to see and have access to all your documents, even if you haven't hauled your big rolling wheeled suitcase around. Okay, so if I take a photo, for example, I can take a photo of anything. I could take a photo of a grave marker, of a headstone. I could take a picture of a relative. I could take a picture of a document. I have sat on the front porch of my relatives' homes with a scrapbook propped up where we had some light and just paged through and taken a picture of every page of their scrapbook or their notes or their things. I don't have to take it. I don't have to argue with them that I'll go take it down and get it copied and bring it back or anything. I just sit there and take photos. How good are the photos? Well, today most of the cameras have either 10 or more or higher resolution. My camera happens to have a 12 megapixel camera, which is more than adequate for taking pictures of documents and other things. So those pictures then are automatically on my smartphone, because I use Google Photos, are automatically uploaded to an online storage. You can do, there's many of them. Amazon has a photo storage. There's many other suppliers out there that have online storage for photos. Photos means notes, records, documents, microfilm, copies of microfilm, anything that I want to get in a digital format from a camera or from a scanner or from any other device that I can put into a file can then be uploaded and made available online for complete usage. So then once it's there, it's available to my computer and also to anyone else that I want to share that with. So I can basically, if I find something that I want to talk to to one of my daughters about or something of that nature, I can simply say share, add it to attach it to an email message, or put it in a Google Docs file and say share this item with my daughter. Okay, so the basic program that's used here to gather all of those documents is Google Photos. Now, the advantage of Google Photos is there's a fairly substantial amount of free storage. If you manage your storage, now If you were thinking this in terms of putting everything you ever did in your life into Google Photos, you'd have to pay some money eventually. But if you use it as a storage place, as a temporary storage place, like some people use Dropbox and some of the other programs, then all you do is take the documents out and put them into more permanent storage on your computer after you're through using them. So these become, but this becomes where your working file is. And this is, in this case, this is a way of creating a working file. And those pictures you see there on the screen, if you're looking at a screen, if you're not looking at a screen and you're listening to this, otherwise, then what we're looking at is a whole bunch of photos of pages of genealogical research. In this case, a bunch of books on vital records in Rhode Island, in the early days of Rhode Island. So Google Photos will back up unlimited photos and videos for free, by the way. So if you're using Google Drive, you're not calling it a photo, and you're trying to create documents and things like that, then eventually you can fill that up. But on their Google backup, they'll back up the photos up to 16 megapixels or 1080 pixels in high definition video from in any quantity, and you can then access them from any phone, tablet, or computer. It's on photos.google.com, and your photos will be safe, secure, and always with you. This is basically the statement directly from Google about the service out there. So I can take photos day after day after day, upload them to Google, and never run out of space. And when I walk home, I have all the photos already available for me. And because 16 megapixels exceeds the quality of most smartphones, you're really getting all of you're going to get off of your smartphone anyway right now. There may be a day when we get smartphones. There are high-end smartphones that do have higher resolution cameras, but they're not very common. The more common smartphones are right now at about 12 megapixels, with many of them at 10 and a few still left at 8 megapixels pictures. Those are very adequate, by the way, for taking notes in a genealogical environment. Okay, so what is Google Docs? And I've mentioned that. Google Docs is a free online web-based application. It's free. Let me kind of qualify the word free. Free means you have an internet connection that you've paid for, or you're using. You have a computer or other device that accesses the internet. You know how to use that. You also have whatever else the costs are involved in accessing the internet. Other than that, there's no additional cost for using Google Docs. It's a free application. It has different dedicated programs for doing documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and forms. And there's also a drawing program. You can create, store, share right on your browser. You don't need any special software. You don't have to download a word processing program. You don't have to do anything. You've got everything right there with Google. Now, one of the things, the basic program that we use, and the one that we call Google Docs, is the word processing program. And it's a pretty generic word processing program. I started using word processing when it was the first very basic. I mean, we were back on old Wang systems and things like that, where it was extremely complex with all the commands. You had to have a command to do a capital letter. You had to have the command to start a new paragraph, all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously, we now have interactive, visually based programs that we can use. But they've become very, very complicated. If you're using one of the competitive programs like Microsoft Word, you understand that it has just an almost endless number of features. And if you want to publish a whole book, you could do it with that. Well, Google Docs is not that complicated. It is quite it's a very simplified. If you ask me, would it do, can I format my footnotes or bibliography? My answer is, well, you probably could, but it would be a little bit difficult. It's kind of it's not really a program for doing that, but it is a very good program for day-to-day documents and the kinds of things that you need. And same with the spreadsheets, same with the presentations, and same with the forms. They're all very basic programs. And it can be accessed from any computer or device with an internet connection, period. So we can get into Google Docs from virtually anything. So here's the little logos. This is what they look like, all their little icons. So we have Google Docs, we have Google Sheets, we have Google Slides, we have Google Forms, we have Google Drawings. Those are the ones that we have. The Sheets is the spreadsheet. The Slides is the presentation program. The Forms actually let you create a form that you could then send to somebody to have them fill it out, and you can then record each of the filled out forms. So let's say you wanted to have, well, I'll give you some examples later on, but it's a way that you can actually send a form out. And Drawings is a very good basic drawing program. The kind of drawing program that we had on the early computers, like Mac Draw, which was, one of my favorite programs because it would you could draw things very quickly and very simply with it if you needed to do so. It isn't like trying to get into Adobe Photoshop. By the way, the contrast here is that a program like Adobe Photoshop, which is the photo manipulation program and a drawing kind of a drawing program in a sense, a design program, has so many features that a master of Adobe Photoshop knows 100 features, at least 100 features of the program. Okay, well, I don't think Google Drawings has 100 features. So I don't think it's not the same kind of challenge. We're not talking about very complex programs here. Very useful programs, by the way, but not very complex. So the first step you need to do is to create a Google account. You have to sign in. If you have a Gmail account, you're already signed into Google. That's your login and your password for a Gmail account. If you don't, you're going to get an automatic Gmail account when you register for Google. You might as well register and get a free Google Gmail account. You say, well, I have another email account that I use. The answer is fine. Just leave that Gmail account sitting out there empty, unused. Don't tell anybody about it, but use it to sign in to Google. And also understand that the Chrome browser that we have online, the one called Chrome that sits on your computer, is you also sign in with your Google account. So whatever Google account you create works for Chrome as well as for Gmail, as well as for Google, generally for all of these programs. So then you'll need to sign into Google Docs. And when you sign into Google Docs, you're signing in with your Gmail login and password, or your Chrome login and password, or whatever login and password you've created when you register with Google. This is the startup screen for Google Docs. It's very simple, very straightforward, like everything Google does. There's only one option, click. You don't have any choice. Click on the blue bar there on the screen, and you'll be able to get into Google Docs. Now, if you're listening to this on the audio version of this, it's pretty hard to describe a program like this, and I only do this occasionally, but it's very hard to describe a program like Google Docs without actually trying it and using it. When you open Google Docs, you get a blank document, a piece of paper, and it has a menu bar across the top, little icons with a ruler and some options that you can use, like selecting fonts and selecting indents, how much indenting on the paragraphs and things like that. All of the basic word processing functions are available, and you just start typing. There's no trick to it. Just start typing. You'll be surprised how easy it is to get started and to do a document. The other thing that's important about Google Docs is that it saves it instantly as you're doing your work. You don't ever have to worry about losing a document because you forgot to save it. By the time you finish typing a word, it's already saved. And every word, and unless you're working offline, obviously if you're working offline, Google isn't going to save those documents, but You can also share those documents. So you can click up in the corner and select share, and you can say, I want to share this with my cousin, or I want to share it with my wife, or with whoever else is working on a computer. And then they can work on that jointly. And we create shared documents where we can add in all of our research and our notes. And so we can see what everybody else is doing and send messages and things back and forth to each other. The next document, the Google Docs. Now, Google Docs is the generic term for all of these programs together, but there is one program individually called Google Docs that is the word processing program. So it's slightly confusing, but it's not. It really doesn't take that much to figure it out. Google Sheets is their spreadsheet program. It's a very basic and a useful spreadsheet program. The only criticism I have is for people who are used to using Microsoft Excel or some other very high-featured program, spreadsheet program. They'll get on there and say, well, how do you do this? And the answer is, well, you probably don't, because that's not part of the program. It's not intended to be a high-end. It's a free spreadsheet. Very useful for doing quick things, and I'll show you some of those uses here in a moment. Once again, you can share this and work with others. And sharing doesn't mean you can just send it to them so they can look at it. Sharing means you can invite them to get access to it so everybody can work on the same document. So the same thing with Google Slides. This is the presentation program. We have people who are presenting these presentations here at the BYU Family History Library who use Google Slides for their presentations. Do you know which ones they are? If you've watched all these different ones, could you tell which program they use to create the presentation? Oh, well, some people probably could, but I can't. I have no idea what they're using. But some of them are using that. Once again, it's shareable, you can interactive, you can work with it with other people. Forms is a program where you create a form, like an invitation, and you accept the invitation, or you provide information to register for an event, or whatever. And once the form is created, then it can be shared or made public so people can fill it out, and then they store all of the filled in forms that you can then use for creating a database or whatever you want to do. And then the next one is Google Draw, and I dropped a photo into the middle of Google Draw there so you could see what could happen if I dropped in a photo. And so that is also shareable, and so you can work on that. So how do you start a new document? You can go to your template gallery, and there's a lot of different kinds of documents there, and they're already set up in that format, so you don't have to format the document. They're available to be formatted. I had used this as a demonstration, so if it comes up and says demonstration in the middle of this, that meant that I was going to actually demonstrate how it worked. But this was a 2-hour class, and I have to eliminate those demonstrations from the 2-hour to make this a 1-hour class. So the advantages of using these programs, these Google Doc programs, is you can import documents from other word processing programs. So if someone has a document made in Microsoft Word, you can open up that Microsoft Word document in Google Docs. Likewise, if you have a Google Docs document that you want to send to somebody who is using Microsoft Word, you can export the Google Docs document into the Microsoft Word format, and then they can just open it up directly in Microsoft Word. You can create a new document, and they're saved as they're created. You can edit and update existing documents. You can collaborate on documents with annotated comments. So you can actually go back and forth and comment on documents when you're working jointly with a particular document. And you can format the document, spreadsheets, and presentations in some pretty basic but some very usable ways. Now, the program behind Google Docs is a program called Google Drive. Now, Google Drive is the storage place. It's the storage program for the Google Docs programs. It's not the storage program for the photos. Okay, so the photos go into a different type of storage. So your photos, Google Photos storage is unlimited and free. Google Drive is not unlimited and free, but it's for documents and other items. Once you put a photo into Google Photos, the only action you can really do with that photo, oh, there's lots of things. You can manipulate them. There's some basic editing functions built into Google Photos. It replaced an old program that's been discontinued by Google called Picasa, which we loved, but it doesn't do all the things that Picasa did, but it does store in a whole lot of photos and lets you organize them in folders and things like that. So it's it's a valuable program, but it's Google Drive is for everything else. Google Drive is simply a list of all of the documents. It's just like a folder on your computer where you put the document, and the document is then stored online, and you can access that from any other device. Now, on mobile devices like smartphones and iPads and tablets, you need to have the app. So there's a Google Docs app, a Google Sheets app, a Google Drawing app. Each of those are little separate icons and go directly to the program. And there is a separate Google Drive app. So all of these are that you would have to download from the Google Drive, from Google Play for Android devices, or from the Apple Store for the for Apple devices, on all the different Apple devices, and for the Mac Store. All of your Google Docs are stored in the Google Drive, so they, if you, all the sheets, every program puts all of those documents into the same storage location. So if you need to find one document, you can go here, and they are put in chronological order. That makes it easy to find the latest documents that you've worked on. If you give them distinctive names, and make sure that you have a date, they're all dated on the last date that they were changed. So all you need to do is give them distinct names, and you can find them very quickly if you wish to do that. So if you are looking for personal Google Drive, you get 15 gigabytes of free storage. That's enough to do casual work, but it's probably not enough to get a lot of serious involvement. If you're going to store a lot of documents and all that, all of those items that you were dragging around in your suitcase to the family history library, then I would submit that you probably need more storage than 15 gigabytes. But you can get up to 100 gigabytes for $2 a month or $20 a year, $19.99. I don't know why they always do that. I guess it doesn't really matter, but it looks like less than $20. I think we're all conditioned to see $19.99 instead of $20. If it said $20, we'd think, oh man, that's real expensive. I don't want to spend that. $19.99. Oh, that's cheap. Yeah. 1 cent difference. But that's 100 gigabytes. If you really need a lot, that's a terabyte of space. That's $100 a year or $10 a month. So it's a little cheaper to do it by the year. A terabyte is more than most people would use most genealogists would use in their remaining lifetime. Unless you're going to store movies and lots and lots of photos, you are really not going to get up to a terabyte. Now, if you're somebody like me and you've been scanning documents since the creation of genealogy back, maybe 30 or 40 years, 35 years like I have, or more than 35 years now, I have my storage, online storage right now is like 7.2 terabytes, which, by the way, would be pretty expensive from Google. If you're into that range, if you really need to store a lot more of documents, then at this point you have to look at two different things. One is what we call backup storage. That is, we're trying to back up the items on our computer in case the computer or the hard drive crashes. That's different than what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is working files that are online. If you're going to back up your documents and you're not going to use them except as you're archived, and you have to think of them in that term, that you're going to go back and get them out of the archive, then you need to do that on external hard drives, which are really cheap right now. For $100 a year, you could buy a terabyte drive every year if you wanted to. They're less than $100 right now for a 1 terabyte drive. And the price is coming down dramatically. Right now, the high-end hard drives are 8 terabyte, and 8 terabyte hard drives selling for around $179 right now at places like Costco and Amazon and online. So, that's really cheap storage. So we don't really want to use Google Drive for backing up all of our data. We want to use it for all of the documents that we're working on or that we might need or we might use that we're moving from place to place. Okay. The other online storage options out there are like Dropbox and Microsoft OneDrive and Apple's iCloud. And the considerations in these are cost, ease of use, the platform you happen to be working on, and your programs. You're going to find some of these more expensive. This isn't all of them. There's hundreds of different storage options out there. But there's some of these are going to be more expensive than Google. Some are going to be less expensive than Google. But you also have to look at the front end and the ability to use the programs. You can use Dropbox, but Dropbox is a static storage. If you're using Dropbox, then you have to have your own word processing program, your own spreadsheet program, your own all those other programs. If you're using Google Docs and Google Drive, then you're using all of the programs are right there, and you're using them, and they're automatically being saved to Google Drive, and you're not having to worry about saving them off and losing them or not having them available. Oh, I forgot to put that in Dropbox. Oh, I can't find it. Anyway, so this involves another at least one or two extra steps of document management to use a separate online storage program. And I have to reinforce the idea here that this is not backup storage. We're not talking about backing up our entire computer. We're talking about working with documents that we select that we're using for a specific purpose, like genealogical research or references. And Drive is fully integrated. When they say that, what they mean is that Google Drive is Google Docs. Everything that's created in Google Docs or Sheets or any of the other programs go directly into the Google Drive. And here's a Google Drive example. I drew this not symbol or no symbol or whatever it is on here. That immediately then becomes available on my phone, on my smart phone or whatever I'm using. Now, in the last few minutes, I'd like to kind of talk about some real life examples of how all this works. Okay, this happens to be a picture of my grandchildren and myself and my wife there in the middle, and the 33 of us, 33 grandchildren, and one of them is not there, but actually two of them are not there. A couple of them are not there. They all have other things. But this was a recent family reunion in 2017. And how we did this is we did this and organized this on a Google Sheets page. Okay, so what we did was we created different categories. And what we're looking at here is a Google Sheets page that illustrates in each column when a certain family in one of our children, we have 7 children, which of these 7 children were going to arrive in Provo for the reunion, and how long they were going to be here, and whether or not they were going to go visit someone else, like in-laws around the countryside. Most of the husbands of my daughters and the wives of my sons, my daughter-in-law and son-in-law, are all related to people here in Utah to some extent, and so they are out visiting their relatives while they come to visit their wife or husband's relatives. So we had this complex situation where we had to figure out who was going to be at each meal, how many people were going to be present, who was going to provide the food, who was going to fix the food, and all of those things. So we had all of these considerations, the comings and goings, and who was staying with who, um, and which houses they were going to stay in, what their plans were, what the things they were trying to do when they were here. Were they going to go see certain things, or were they going to stay? Were they going to come camping with us? Were they going to, and what day were they going to come camping? Did they need camping equipment? We made food assignments for the times we were together. Who was going to provide the food? Who was going to fix the food? Who was on cleanup duty? Uh, we had all those blue shirts ordered in for our reunion, and so everybody had to supply a shirt size. We could order in all the shirts. Went camping up in the mountains here in Utah, and so we needed to know what extra camping equipment we needed to bring for the people who needed tents or sleeping bags or whatever else they needed to go camping. So that's just the kind of thing that you can do with the combined nude. Now, the point here was that everybody has access to that same Google Sheets document. So if they had changes in their plans, they go in and make the change. So when we look at it, we have an instant update of when people are available or when they're not going to come or when they're going to be gone or when there's some other problem that changes. Okay, so let's now apply this to a research issue. A research issue is we've got this research that I'm doing on one of my ancestors in Rhode Island. And so in this particular case, I have a narrative of the different of where I am with the that particular research on that particular family that I can then share with people. If someone else is interested in the family, I don't have to make it all up again. I just simply copy and paste this information and send it to them. And then they know where we are with the research on this particular family. In addition to that, I can keep on this a list of microfilms. Um, I have color coded the microfilms. What I do is I went to familysearch.org to the catalog and went down and listed every microfilm from Rhode Island that could conceivably have information about my ancestors. In this particular case, by the way, I'm in the process of partially reconstructing all of the tanners who lived in Rhode Island from the 1600s through to the 1800s. So I want to know everybody who was in every person who had the Tanner surname from the mid 1600s up through 1800. And so I'm going to get every piece of microfilm available. And I've been doing this for some considerable time, so I've already got a lot of the microfilms ordered and they're available down here at the BYU library. There's others that are in the Family Search Library, Family History Library in Salt Lake City, so I would have to travel up there. Having this list gives me an instant list. If I find myself like I do today and I had time, I would then have a list of all the microfilm that I was interested in. I could then see if it was here in the library. By color coding this list, I can tell whether it's in the library, available, whether it's on order, whether it's not at BYU, whether it's been reviewed once, and whether it's one of the working files, meaning I'm going back and forth with that document, and I need to remember that's particular I have. This list includes books in addition to microfilms, and so some of those books have been digitized and are available online, and I've marked all those that are available. And anything that is available online I can access from the computers here at the library anytime that I want to look at those items. Or I can even pull it up on my phone if I needed to pull it up on my phone and look at it. The list here is available to me on my phone, so I don't have to lug around a notebook or a pad or anything else. I can simply pull out my phone and look at this and see exactly where I am and what microfilm I need to do, to look at, to research next. I can extend this by doing what I've created now. In addition to this is timelines. I keep adding in when I get a new document and I find some more information and I add it to my timeline. Uh, I'm also analyzing all of the people with the Tanner name in and making lists of all the people who appear in the 1790 census named Tanner and all of the others who are available in that Rhode Island at that time. So I can start sorting these people out and understanding who it is. The point here is to try to identify the remote ancestors and their origin. And without knowing which person I have, historically, for example, in the Tanner family, this particular Tanner family, the tradition has been that there was one progenitor, one person in Rhode Island who was the ancestor of the Tanners. And the answer is, well, there happens to be quite a few different Tanners at the same time there in Rhode Island, and many of them, and I'm still determining the number, but many of them had the same name. So we have a William Tanner who is supposed to be the ultimate progenitor and or originator or immigrant or whatever. And in fact, there are a number of William Tanners who are all living at the same time in the same place around Rhode Island, which, by the way, is a very small place. So, um, I'm sorry if you're from Rhode Island. I didn't mean to offend you, but we live in Utah, and it's smaller than most of our counties here in Utah. Um, we can, we drive across our valley. Utah Valley here is probably larger than Rhode Island. But so basically, that's how I'm using it. And the advantage, of course, is what I started to talk about at the beginning, and that is that all of this information, which would take a whole notebook, by the way, of information, and all the other supporting documents are immediately available. Every document that I've referred to in here is available. I have actually attached the documents systematically to the people in the familysearch.org family tree on the memory section. So I have, hundreds of documents attached up there for the family. So anything I need to view, I can view online on my phone or on a computer. And then I have all of the reference material and all of my organized notes and records here. And what else would I need to drag around? Actually, nothing. I don't miss anything at all. If I need a book, I can look it up here. If I want to read it, I can find it online. Um, and if I haven't, then I can go to the library, take more pictures and more scanning, which I've been doing, and adding that as I do the research into this particular document. So it's available on my smartphone, on my computer at home, on a computer in the library, anywhere I happen to be that I want to look at this information. If you want to learn about how all this works, Google has a learning center. It's called the Google Learning Center appropriately, and you can look it up on Google. There is a program involved here called G Suite. And so this is the G Suite Learning Center. Well, the G Suite is essentially the word processing spreadsheet and all of those programs that go along with the Google Docs. But the G Suite is the professional version that is a actual purchase subscription version of the programs that has been developed for businesses. So if you have a business and you want to scale up to a more complex set of document production programs, then G Suite is an option for you to look at. And the other thing that's important, it's available on my iPhone, on my smartphone, if I had an Android device or any other device. And the little icons are going to take me directly to my Google Docs. And within a few seconds, I can bring up any one of those records that I've looked at over the past few years that I've been accumulating information about this particular family. I actually have create a Google Docs sheet, a page for in Google Docs in the word processing program for each of the areas that I'm doing research on. And as I do research on an individual, I create a page for that individual, and then all the information and all of the notes and everything that I take and links and microfilm or anything else that I'm looking at, I keep as my research log, and my ongoing information is kept right there on my phone and available anyplace. So I literally no longer have to haul all of that information, the books and the piles of things into the library when I do my research. So what can we use this for? Let me give you some more suggestions. First of all, research notes and plans. This is kind of a summary of the things that I've mentioned. Anything that I need to know, what I'm going to go look for at the library is that list of microfilms that I made. A research log, keeping track of all the places and things that you've done. This is pretty simple because I can simply take photos of each of the books or items that I look at, the microfilms and things like that, and keep the numbers and all of the bibliographic information for making citations and sources. So I have all that information so I can create sources and attach them to my programs, which by the way are also online, and so I'm using that. Uh, I can do that right there and access the program, what I've already put up online. I can do collaborative family research. I can work with other members of my family or other relatives or other people who are interested and and collaborate so that they can actually see the documents that I'm producing and have access to the logs that I've created. Then I can also write reports, summaries, and manage my sources. All of that can be done online and included into the Google Docs and other programs. Obviously, if you're into publishing and you want to have all this stuff published or put into book format, you may have to go into another program. But like I said, you can export this as text files, or you could export anything in there as a Microsoft Word document, and all the photos and everything else that you put in your Google Doc comes across into Microsoft Word. So it's a basic tool for doing all of this. So the answer here is to get busy, get going, and start working with and using the programs. I have found that when these programs have been around a long time, uh, relatively speaking, in the computer world. Uh, Google has been improving them and providing more access and making them more visible. But it really takes a matter of sitting down and starting and doing it and learning a little bit about it, because once you get involved with the program, then you'll begin to see immediately that there are many other uses for the program. We now use Google Sheets regularly to organize all sorts of activities, all sorts of things that are not necessarily directly genealogical in nature, but whenever we're doing some kind of organizational thing, like anytime our family is getting together, it seems like we pull together a Google Doc or a Google Sheets to tell everybody when we need to be there and how and who's going to participate and what they're going to be involved with. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Remember that these webinars are being uploaded to our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. It's at youtube.com, Google once again, and they are available. I would suggest that you might want to subscribe, and that would be very helpful. It will give you a notification of the new videos as they go up, but it will also help us in our visibility here. Thank you again for watching. Oh, we got a question. We're not offline yet. Okay.
So the first question is, I'm not sure, you didn't necessarily mention a lot of these today, but if there is a cloud-based genealogy program, how will you know?
Well, okay, yeah, cloud-based, that is a jargon term. It's on the internet. So we have lots of them.
Mhm.
Family Search has the family tree. So familysearch.org has the family tree. Ancestry.com has ancestry family trees. MyHeritage has their family trees. Find My Past has their family trees. GennyNet has their family trees. WikiTree has a family tree. Genie, GENI.org is the big Genie program. It's also owned by MyHeritage, is a big online family tree program. All of those are cloud-based family tree programs. Yeah, there are many, many programs like that.
Well, the question also was asking how would you know whether or not it will exist from, year to year in the future, and so like whether or not to invest in it if you think it might disappear.
The answer is you don't. The only one that we really know is not going to disappear is FamilySearch.org, Family Tree, and it's hard to communicate that to people. But uh, Family Search is sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and one of their basic religious doctrines involves doing genealogical work, and their commitment is to maintain the family tree uh, permanently. So it'll be around as long as or longer than any of the other commercial programs. The other problem, though, is that once the data is online like that, it isn't necessarily protected. And there are a lot of genealogists who believe that they might want to keep their core data on some other offline program, like a local uh, program like Roots Magic or Family Tree Builder or Ancestral Quest or something like that. There's just a number of programs out there that could be used as a place to work with your data. But the advantage of having it in an online program like Family Search, Family Tree, or Ancestry, or whatever, is that then your data is all there, all available to you wherever you are and whenever you want to use it.
Perfect.
Any other?
Well, that looks like that is the end of the questions. Oh, one just popped up real quick.
Somebody wanted to know about being organized. Well, there are specific. We have quite a few webinars and other short organizational things. So you might want to look through the over 300 web videos that we have now up on YouTube and find one about organization. Maybe we need to organize YouTube. I don't know. Thanks for watching.
All right, big thanks to James for that presentation. We will post this onto YouTube, like he was saying, here in the next hour or two. And just as a final reminder, our next webinar will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time again. That will be with James Tanner. I read it in the newspaper. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.